to A Well-Designed Business. My name is LuAnn, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company WindowWorks from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. Today, a very impressive lady joins me on the show, Laurel Smith. She is the principal of Farrington Avenue in Massachusetts. Now, last year at LuAnn Live, I gifted each of the VIP attendees with a headset, which is the type of headset that I require that you have when you do an interview with me. And I challenged each of them to take action in their business and then to come on the show and tell all of us about it. Laurel has not only accomplished so much since LuAnn Live, but she also has experienced several aha moments in building and growing her business since then, and I think you're going to enjoy it. Now, listen particularly how she describes that the key to her growth really began and was catapulted when she got real with these questions. Why am I doing what I'm doing? What is my mission? What is the problem I want to solve? And what do I ultimately want to achieve? All right. Listen for the moment, she says. The clarity that I got in answering these questions ultimately paved the way for the rest of my life and also for where I am today. Now, I have to tell you, Laurel's story is actually like a particularly fascinating case study for the beginning years of an entrepreneurial journey, the ups, the downs, the stops and starts that so many of us go through. She discusses some of the assumptions that she made about owning a business, some of the mistakes she made in starting it up, and how she finally came to exactly what she knows she was meant to do with her professional life. And this came after a career as an occupational therapist with 8 years service in the U.S. Army. So for Laurel, it was finally tapping into something much deeper, something that lights a passion in her and that will ultimately sustain her through all of the challenges ahead of her as a business owner. So I think you're going to like it. Now, I want to thank first both My Doma Studio and Kravit for sponsoring the show. And of course, they were both with us at LuAnn Live as well. These two sponsors believe in you, in your ability to be profitable and to have an outstanding business. Look at My Doma Studio, recently creating 19 hours with days and days of educational content for you specifically to up-level your business. And Kravit, with more than 100 years in business, you can confidently place your orders for fabric, furniture, wallpaper, and trim, and tell your clients their monies and their orders are safe, that Kravit will be there to fulfill the order, okay? Add to this that you can access the entire curated Kravit line in your My Doma studio, okay? So please visit both of these outstanding companies and open your accounts today. For Kravit, go to kravit.com, and for My Doma Studio, go to mydomastudio.com/a well-designed business. Now, let's see if Laurel Smith sparks something deep inside of you too that gets your engine going. Hi, Laurel. Thanks so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Hi, LuAnn. I'm so grateful to be here.
Yeah, so here's what's really a funny thing is that I have no idea when this episode is going to air, Laurel, because I do have a lot of shows recorded as we are doing this. But we are recording this today, which would have been the VIP day of LuAnn Live last year, 1 year ago today in 2019. And you were there with me for that weekend, weren't you?
I was.
I know. And And, I'm going to out you a little bit here, sweetie. Of course, it was an amazing weekend, and we met a lot of people, and we made a lot of new friends. But you came up to me at one point during that weekend, and I think after the second or third word out of your mouth, you started crying, right? And I remember that. I remember that. And of course, that happened a couple of times over the weekend. But, it would bring us back to that moment. Why did you come up to me? What did you say to me? And share it with our friends. What was so significant, or so, what was the deal with you in that moment, in that place right then and there?
Yeah, so it was a really interesting time for me. Just to give some context, at the time I was finishing my MBA. That was in April, and I was set to graduate in May. And I had really gone through a tumultuous time in my life, really leading up to that point. I had my daughter. I had previous career in the Army, and I was in the Army for 8 years, and then I had my daughter and decided to go back to business school. And I was kind of in this period where I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. I had always had this dream of being in business for myself and kind of pursuing design. But I kept tabling that. And even in business school, I felt like starting my own business out of business school was kind of risky. And so I didn't really know what I was going to do with my life, and wasn't totally psyched about all of my available options. And at LuAnn Live, I just kind of made the decision, like, I'm going to do this. And I was so emotional coming up to you at the end, because I had been listening to your podcast for basically 2 years at that point. I found your podcast my first week of business school. And so I started listening, and I had been listening to your podcast for 2 years, and the amount of information and resources and the guests that you brought on the show really were the first to put the idea in my head that I maybe should pursue this interest of mine and this kind of need to work for myself and be my own boss and kind of write my own destiny. And then being at LuAnn Live, I just had this overwhelming sense of permission from you, from all the panelists, and from all the people that I met, that pursuing that direction was not only okay, but, the best way forward for me and my family. And I just, felt this sense of, like, you can do this, Laurel, and B, you're gonna do this. And I was just like so overcome with emotion and gratitude for everything that you have done, kind of indirectly. I mean, we never really met each other at that point, but I don't think you grasped the impact that you had on my life and without even knowing me. And I was so grateful to you, to the event, to the podcast, and just to the mindset shift that you brought about in me. And that's why I was so emotional.
I have to tell you, you want to talk about why you get up in the morning, right? I mean, I remember the moment. I remember hugging you. I remember seeing and feeling your transformation. But like this sentence, permission to go for it, that you felt this sense of permission to go for it, like that's the kind of sentence that I live for, right? Like that's exactly what I want. I said to you guys during the show, during the event, that my mom gave me that gift, right? If not you, Lou, who, right? Like she just raised me like, go do it. You have an idea, go do it, right? Like gather your information. I said it, in my first book, it's like, you need to have, like, my dad was the one that was like, why do you think you could do it? And of course, my mom was like, of course you can do it. And so what I learned from that was I can do anything, but I do need a plan to do it. You can't just like run around and say, I can do this, right? But to know that there's been a way for me to share that sentiment and to share it with you in such a way that you take it as your own and you're like, I can do this. That is just so amazing to me. And I am so grateful to you for sharing that with me that day and today, because this is what this is about. It's about every day letting every interior designer out there, window treatment professional out there. Let's add the architects that are listening now, the landscape architects that are listening now, the web designers that are listening now, that yes, you have a gift, you have a talent, and you can do it, right?
Yeah. And I think for me too, I had a daughter. I have two kids now, but I have a son and a daughter. And when you said that sentence that my mom always taught me, if not you, who? If not you,
Lou,
who? Yeah.
You can just go, if not you, who? It works.
I just like had to leave the room at that moment because I was like, I need my daughter to know that. Like, I need my daughter to know that, you know, your first shot at a career may not be the one you love. Right. And if you're not happy, you can't pour from an empty cup. And when you become a mom, believe me, your happiness takes on a new role, because if you can't be happy and teach your kids what it means to be happy, that sets off a trajectory of behavior that is negative and impactful in its own right. And I had this sense of I need to fill myself up, and I need to do this so that I can walk the walk and talk the talk with my kids. And that when they're 34 and that they're at this fork in the road, I tell them, you know what, you want to pursue a different passion, do it. And I did it, and you'll be fine.
That's right. It's exactly right. I mean, there's always things that we have to, again, like I said, you have to have the plan. You have to know, try and at least evaluate the obstacles that might be in your path and strategize. But ultimately, it is up to you. You can do it, and you should. And that's what your message is like, I hear what you're saying. It's like you took away from that I've got a little girl and now a little boy, that I have to model a behavior of, I can do this. I might have to work for it, but rather than just, oh, this is my lot in life. I went to school. I have an MBA. I was an occupational therapist. I was in the Army. That's what I chose to do. It's like, no, I can turn a corner. I can take this, everything, because you know what I believe, Laurel? I believe that everything we've done gets us to the point for the next event, right?
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so it is all that. Like, listen, you've got an MBA, you know, that business background is going to serve your interior design firm in spades. And so that's not like, oh, why did I do that? It's like, yes, one more thing that prepares me to have an awesome interior design business and to be a profitable leader, CEO of my company. And I'm 100% sure that even the experience in the Army, the discipline that you learned, and the there's times when you just got to do what you're told to do, right? It's like, okay, soldier, go do it, right? And there's going to be moments when you are knee deep into however many clients. And, how about now? Like we're interviewing during the coronavirus. I mean, there are days now where it's just like, oh, like I'm thinking, relate to WindowWorks. I've got 10 employees. I can't just say, you know what? It's a little hard right now to do business. We have to measure in person and we have to install in person. Let me just put this on hold. It's like, no, sweetie, no, soldier, get up, go do this, right? That's like, so that you learn from that. So it's all coming together just the way it should. And it brings you, and you're all of 34 years old. You know what I mean? It's like, hello, we got, 50 years left here that you can be in business. So, especially if you're doing what you love, you could theoretically, literally be in business for at least 40 more years, right? And so that's a long time to not make a change if your heart isn't where it should be, right?
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because I have a lot of, I always have this false sense of I'm getting too old, I'm 34 and, but now that I'm back in school, formally for interior design, I always feel like, oh, I should have done this to begin with. And I keep reminding myself that everything I've learned in occupational therapy, in the Army, in business, is making me a better designer. I take so much of my approach, and I've built my brand around everything that I learned in occupational therapy and about how humans interact with their environment and how after injury and when you can't perform certain tasks, that impacts your sense of self and your quality of life and your well-being. And my whole mission and vision for my company is built on this idea of creating wellness through design and making the home a happy place and, a kind of a healthy place for ambitious moms and families. And I wouldn't have that if I didn't have that experience about injury and how people kind of psychologically and functionally cope with injury if I wasn't an occupational therapist first. So I firmly believe my path is setting the stage for future success. It's just not coming at the speed that I once thought, but I also am taking a lot of comfort in kind of the process and staying patient through what seems like setbacks.
You have the freedom to make the pivot, but you needed to go through some soul searching and direction. And what is that pivot and why does it matter to you? That's correct. Am I right in that, Laurel?
Yeah. So after LuAnn Live, I was getting ready to graduate and I was like, okay, that's it. And I'm going to do this, and just started telling my friends, like everyone was getting jobs and they're like, oh, Laurel, what are you going to do? And I was like, well, I'm going to start my own business. And just even saying that was like, are you really? And then, my friends knew that I was interested in interior design. So I had a friend connect me with a realtor who was a friend of hers because I mentioned that after LuAnn Live, I was enamored. I hope enamored means love. I always feel like it means hate.
No.
But what's hate? I don't know, but yeah. I always say that and then think, God, I hope I'm saying it in the right context.
No, because it's like from like amour, from love, right? So enamored, it's okay. Right. Yeah.
Okay. I was enamored with Shauna Lynn Simon and Taylor Spellman.
I know. How could you not be, right?
I know. And so I was just like, yep, I'm going to do it. So because staging for me was, and I don't mean this to minimize their exceptional achievements or businesses, but for me, it was a little bit lower hanging fruit. I had so much anxiety about calling myself a designer without formal education. And I know that there's designers that are successful without formal education. For me, I really wrestled with it. So for me, I thought staging was something I could do because I'd been doing that at my house. I spent the last essentially 32 years kind of rearranging my house. So that's where I started, and I dove all in, and I did 2 clients. Oh, I met with this realtor and she was like, can you stage a condo in 3 weeks? And I'm like, yep. And I didn't have any inventory. I had basically no LLC. I had no insurance. I had no contract. I had nothing. I just came home and I told my husband, I said, she asked me to do it at the end of April. And I told her yes. And he's like, with what inventory? I'm like, I'm not sure yet. So I bought a bunch of inventory, did my first client, and realized I am way in over my head here. This is, I always have this sense of it's not going to be that bad, but, and I'm grateful for that because in a lot of ways it breaks down barriers for me that had, it propels me forward in situations where I think it would hold other people up. Mm-hmm. And my husband is the perfect balance to me because I'm the dreamer, a lot like you talk about with you and Vin. I'm the dreamer and the visionary, and he's the pragmatic, like, okay, show me the numbers,
right?
Show me how this is going to happen. And so I have this sense of like, yeah, it'll be fine, it'll work out. And I did, and I realized like I'm way in over my head here. So I did 2 staging projects and thought I need to have a little bit more structure. So I ended up purchasing Shauna Lynn Simon's course, and I met her at LuAnn Live. I actually sat with her on the VIP day and talked with her at length about this. And so I purchased her course. I made a lot of mistakes with regard to the inventory I purchased, but I purchased her course and I started to get a little bit more confident with regard to like there's a bit of science to staging. And she's exactly right when she says staging is designed to sell, whereas design is designed to live. And the science behind the design to sell is very strategic. And I really learned a lot of that through her course. And so I got very confident in kind of the why you'd put a furniture here as opposed to there, why you want a bed this way, not that way. And so I started to get confident in that. But about halfway through the summer, after LuAnn Live, I realized, okay, I've gotten myself into a ton of debt, and I kind of bit off way more than I can chew with this staging stuff. I don't really have a solid plan for this. I kind of dove in a little bit too aggressively without a firm foundation, and I could really see how I was starting to kind of crumble under that a little bit. And I had to go back to the basics. And so, I had read your first book, and talked with a bunch of people at LuAnn Live, and I just started to say, okay, why am I doing what I'm doing? What is my mission? And how does the staging kind of fit into that? And what is the problem I want to solve, and what do I ultimately want to achieve? And sitting down to get that clarity honestly paved the road for basically the rest of my life, and also where I am today.
You know what? I love that you just said that, because every time I am hired to do a presentation, I think every single time I'm hired to do one, I always start with, you have to start with your mission and vision for what you're doing. And I have to tell you, as I'm telling that and talking about that, I often feel like 70% of the audience is like, okay, whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
like, and
I
right?
read your book and I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do that. But
yes, you see, and it's like, it is so critical. It right? You get it now when you come through. Now, I know that you had your self-exploration, but I also know that you worked with Nicole Heimer in defining this for yourself, correct? Right?
Yes. So I worked with Nicole, actually before LuAnn Live. I found out about LuAnn Live through her.
Oh, nice.
And I worked with her, but I worked with her on my design. Staging was not on my radar until I went to LuAnn Live. And I was like, oh, I could do that.
But that's the thing though, right? Like, so you had figured out, I mean, let me just ask you, maybe I misunderstand the timeline. When you worked with Nicole, was that when you figured out the connection to your background in occupational therapy, that would be your why with your design firm, and then you come to LuAnn Live and you get like this bug with, being, enamored with Taylor and Shauna, and you take a detour and you have to come back, or you had not identified that at even the wellness design with Nicole yet?
Nicole was instrumental in helping me create my messaging, which my why definitely factored into that, but it was still a little, I guess what I'm saying is I crystallized my why after LuAnn Live. Even when working with Nicole, I had, in my opinion, a very fluffy mission and vision and kind of business plan. But after LuAnn Live, and I kind of dove in head first with these two clients. And then I realized like, oh God, I'm in a little bit deeper water than I thought I was going to be. And I really had to go back to the basics, because the strategy of my new plan was directly tied to that why and that mission and vision. And everything I did from that point forward was related to the why. And I flushed out my messaging with Nicole, but I hadn't fully flushed out the mission of my company and the why.
And, just to really drive the point home, knowing your mission and your vision is not a step that can be skipped, is it? It is no. And I know because I see the eyeballs glaze. And of course, every time, by the time I'm done talking, everybody's smiling and happy again. But and the thing is, you would think that I might change my presentations to not start with something that I feel like 70% of the audience is like, whatever. But I know how important it is. You have to know what it is and why it is and who you are in doing it. Why you, right?
Yeah.
You can't have an if not you who if you don't know what you are going to bring that's different. There's a gabillion interior designers. There's a gabillion window treatment people. But why would somebody work with you? And you have to tap all the way into the core of that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no. And to be honest, I've had a lot of anxiety more recently going back to school, because it seems like I'm taking 3 steps backward. And even since going back to school, I've realized how much technical expertise there had to be had in the design field. And I was adamant about not working for somebody else and kind of coming up through the school of hard knocks. But I've changed my perspective, and I'm now applying for internships, and I'm fully intending on working for somebody else first. And I have a lot of anxiety about that because I feel like I feel like I painted this picture of success that didn't have me in it. It had Shay McGee in it, and I adore her, and I kind of mapped out what success was going to look like, based on her narrative, based on her storyline. And I've had to come to terms with the fact that my story is different. And the reason that I'm able to take confidence in that is because I go back to my mission and my why. And I say, I'm different and my story is different because this is what I want to do. And this is why I want to do it. And because that's what I want to do, I have to do this first. I have to go to school. I have to get technically competent in design because, I guess I'll give you my mission and my vision for some context. But when I was an occupational therapist, I became acutely aware with this concept that our well-being and our quality of life is directly tied to our environment. And as an occupational therapist, I used to work with patients who were recovering from musculoskeletal and neurological injury. And what we know from that is when you have an injury and you can't perform your occupations, which in the field of occupational therapy, we define occupation as how you occupy your time. So occupation doesn't necessarily mean paid work. When you can't perform those and when your habits, roles, and routines are impacted, your quality of life, your sense of self, your kind of mental health and quality of life is really impacted. And for me, becoming a mom and a working and ambitious mom, I know that I take a lot of pride and I take a lot of cues from how I'm doing in life from my house and my home. And, I really had this overwhelming sense of that I never feel like I'm always put together. And when my house is in complete disarray, it just substantiates that belief. And so when my home is really in order and functioning well, and I'm able to execute my habits, roles, and routines in a way that's efficient and effective, I feel good about myself. And when I feel good about myself, I can give the most of myself to my family. And this realization is what made me think about the workforce and how the workforce is changing and how more moms are now entering the workforce. I think I did a paper in school, but approximately 70% of all women in 2016 with children under 18 were in the labor force. And another staggering statistic is that among married couple families, about half of them were had dual earning incomes, meaning that now women are making up, or mothers are making up, a huge percentage of the workforce, and they're responsible for a significant portion of the total household income. And this places a huge stress on moms and families because moms are still responsible for a lot of the unpaid household management work at home. And my whole mission is to create wellness through design, because I believe that what I want to do is create a change in our society, starting with changes at home. And that's my vision, creating change in society starting at home. And my mission is to create wellness at home through design. And in order to do that, I really need to have that technical competence to know, how does the kitchen function the best? What's the best kitchen layout? What is, from a space planning and a circulation standpoint, how do all the architectural features impact wellness and design? How does lighting impact design? And there's a lot of science to that. And I wanted to be an expert in that. I wanted to be an expert in that because I wanted to give that expertise of how to set up your home to make your life more efficient, and then have that efficiency transfer into well-being and health for you and your family. And because I needed that expertise, I had to go back to school. And so you can kind of see how all of this goes back to, I made the decision that was my mission and vision, and this is my why. And then, okay, the problem I want to solve is really kind of this home transformation for people. And in order to do that, I need the technical competence and the skill. And in order to have that, I need to go back to school. And so
if you give a mouse a cookie, he's going to ask for a glass of milk.
So it's been this trajectory, but really rooted in that clarity of, what is it that I really want to do? What is the problem I really want to solve? And I know that, people hire designers for internal and external problems, and I really want to tap into both. And in order to do that, I felt that going back to school and now working for somebody else and really honing that craft is, in my opinion, the best way I can serve my vision.
This is, first of all, it is so clear how passionate you are about this, you see, and this is exactly why mission and vision is so important, because we get you often talking about this, and you're lighting up. You're lighting. I can hear it. I can feel it. So that's a compelling, we talk about storytelling in our business all the time. We talk about our Fred Burns only. This is it. Somebody else can, there's different reasons why people are attracted to wellness design. And so somebody could come from, having, God forbid, a sick child that they've been, my niece got her, and my niece and my nephew got their daughter through 2.5 years of being diagnosed with chemo and coming out to, what is the word called? Remission, right?
Yeah.
And so it doesn't, the point is that there are a lot of reasons why you are an interior designer, a lot of reasons why you're attracted to a particular type of design. Some are very emotional and from a health or wellness standpoint. Some are just emotional from, the point is, it's why is it you? And that's your whole thing with this clarity and understanding your mission. Because if I start to talk to you about interior design and you go off on this tangent, if I'm one of those mothers that's got 2 or 3 kids under 5 or 6 years old, or however many years old, and I have that feeling like you described, I never feel completely put together. But if I come into my kitchen, if I come into my home and it feels orderly, it feels like it's structured, it feels like it functions, then my brain starts to go, oh, I'm put together. I've got this. I mean, that's what I heard from that. Is that what you meant by that, Laurel?
Yeah, I think it's getting those cues from your environment that set the momentum and kind of that positive change in your life. I related a lot to getting a haircut. When you get a haircut, I think like I always get my haircut and think, oh, I wish I had somewhere to go right now.
That's right.
Like,
you got to schedule it for the days that you've got somewhere to go.
Yeah. Or putting, getting dressed in a really nice outfit. It's like insta confidence and insta feeling of like, all right, I want to go kill it. Or when you lose, when you lose 10 pounds and then you go spend $1,000 on new clothes, that small, seemingly insignificant change sets off a cascade of other changes in your life that create wellness. And so you'll notice, hopefully I didn't say it incorrectly, but my mission is supporting wellness, because I think the creation of wellness is multifaceted, and design is a piece of creating wellness, but not the only piece of the puzzle. But what I really want to do is create a place where ambitious women feel fulfilled. And I believe it because I know it to be true for me, that you can't pour from an empty cup. And so my real, hopefully, the person that I hope to benefit from this the most is the children of those mothers. I want these mothers to feel awesome, and I want this design to set off a cascade of changes in their life that ultimately makes them more fulfilled and able to give more of themselves and connection to their families.
And what I love about this is that this is not something that you can just adopt as your own. This is a true expression of a Nicole Heimer Define Your Brand, of Fred Burns only, because everything you're saying is admirable. Everything you're saying is true. But there is a client out there that is a young mother of kids and is like, yeah, no pretty house is going to make me feel happier. Like, in other words, this is not true for everybody, but it's so true for you that the people that it resonates with are going to flock to you. They're going to say, yes, you get me. I need to come in and feel like I own it in my house, that my house supports me, my house lifts me up. Because when I feel supported in my external environment, then I am happy all day long to read another book, wipe another nose, tie another shoelace, and do another jumping jack, right? I mean, this is the point. And so it's really tapping into this. And I want to wrap it around to, I started to mention that I've had these kind of conversations with my daughter and even with Sarah at times is, and to your point of sometimes I feel like I'm 34 already. And this is it. You could not have come to this crossroads right here without everything and every single part of it. Your experience at you having the children, having the experience of being a mom. And so coming to it at 34 years old is not late. You could have listened to this podcast by somebody else with this exact same message. I want mothers to feel supported. I want them to be able to fill up the cup of their children, blah, 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 blah. If you were 20 years old, you'd be like, whatever, yawn.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right? And so the point is that, I discovered my mission to have this podcast when I was 53. You know what I mean? Like, come on. You know what I'm saying? So it's like my big thing is to make sure that you recognize all the messages in your path, though, right?
Yeah.
And then combine that with some guts to go do it, right?
Yeah.
It's that what you started with. You have permission. You have your vision. You have your mission. You know what you're supposed to do in your gut, what you're supposed to do. You have permission to go do it, whether you are 34, 53, or 73. Go do it. You were born to do it, right?
Well, and that's what, yeah, totally. And when that's what I talk about in the podcast is I heard guest after guest, Darla Powell,
yes.
had an entire career and at 50 something or maybe younger.
She was younger, about 47 or so, right.
Yeah,
but still older than dirt as far as you're concerned, right?
She did it. And I just kept hearing stories like that. And I was like, I felt so alone. Like I felt like I was the only one at this crossroads in there. At the time I was 32. I was 32 when I started business school. And believe me, for business school, I was a grandmother. I was literally the only mom and a grandmother with
That's
regards
crazy.
That's crazy. But I heard guest after guest say, yep, I did it. I did it. And you hear it once and you're like, yeah, okay, but they're special. You hear it twice and you're like, yeah, okay, but they were, born with a silver spoon in their mouth. And then you hear it 50 times and you're like, well, maybe do this.
Maybe there's something to this. Maybe it is in between my ears.
It's the same thing with the mission. I read your book. I had heard that on the podcast, and I was like, yeah, okay, but there's more important things to worry about.
Teach me something that's really going to make a difference, Lou. What are you starting with that fluff for?
Exactly. And then when I dove in head first and didn't have that anchor, I was like, oh, okay, I get it. Yes.
Well, it's so true, right? It's like, whatever it is, it's like going to the grocery store without a list. It's the exact same analogy. It's like you can go to the grocery store without a list and you're going to come back with things to feed your family, but you're probably also going to come back with a bunch of stuff you don't need. You also might miss the one ingredient for the dinner that you were making that night because there was no, why am I at the grocery store? Okay. Yep. Now, the consequences aren't as great. Like when you open a business with why am I at a business, the consequences are greater. You end up going into staging and you end up buying inventory and you end up doing things that you not necessarily should have done at that moment. Okay.
Right.
You can go back to the grocery store as soon as you get home and you forgot the ingredient. But, it's the thing is that it's everything. It's what every single thing you do. Why are you doing it? Right.
Yeah.
And I love that. And of course, all the mistakes along the way, they are our experiences that impact us in a way that teaches us not to ignore. Like, I've said it on the show a dozen times. I believe that the universe keeps putting a situation in front of you until you take the lesson from it.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
right. So go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I by midsummer found myself in a ton of debt, like a number that I had never before thought was possible for little old me. But my husband, God bless him, is just, in my opinion, the salt of the earth, and so patient with me and my multi-passionate approach to life. But, I don't regret that. I look at that debt as tuition in the college of success, and I have learned so much of what not to do, but I've also learned that, like, yeah, I got myself in this debt, and you know what? I'm figuring it out, and it's not that bad, and I'm very responsible, with regard to paying that back, and he's very confident in our ability to manage that and kind of move forward. He also sees it as kind of a landmark, but not a barrier, a landmine, but not a barrier. And I guess I'm saying, like, I made a ton of mistakes, and I'm so glad I did.
Well, the thing about that is there are people that have the experience that you had of, putting yourself into debt, chasing, let's use the phrase, of the day, chasing the shiny object, right? It's like, oh, maybe I should do this, and maybe I should do that, and I should invest in that, and I should try that. And there are people that do that, and they continue to do it. They never, I say all the time, you got to do the autopsy of every single project. Well, you have to always sit down and go back and analyze and revise too, and see. That's what's clear that you've done. You didn't just continue to chase and throw money at ideas. You were like, okay, all right, I might have gotten very excited here. I might have dipped my toe into a lot of different places, and now I'm in debt. And are they serving me? And if they're not serving me, why aren't they serving me? Why is this not working out? Oh, okay, right, because I don't really know what I'm doing. Not what I'm doing as a person, not what I'm doing as a business person, not what I'm doing as a designer, but I don't know what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, right? Like, why am I doing it? That is the thing. And so when you sat and analyzed that, then that investment that became debt is a learning lesson. Right?
Yeah.
But if you there are people that will just be like, okay, it must be another course. I must need a different course because I don't, this didn't work. Oh, I must need another, degree because that didn't work. Oh, but so what I'm saying is there could be someone with the exact same decisions, exact same investments, the exact same going to school, but isn't doing the analyzation that results in why am I doing these? And when you don't do that, that is why mission and vision are so important. It's just experiences and mounting debt and whatever else. But when you stop and you say, why? It's almost like, what it is? It's almost like if you just have a bunch of makeup, like you use the example of a haircut. If you have a whole drawer of makeup and you just keep putting the stuff on and you're like, why am I not getting better? Why do I look sillier and sillier? Right? It's because there's no plan for the makeup. Like, you don't put the lipstick on the eyebrows. You know what I'm saying? And so you can start out that way, but if you don't just stop and say, what's working, what's not working, why do I want to do this? Then if you don't stop and do that, then it's just keep piling on without a reason why. And so I commend you for having the guts, because it does start with having guts. You do have to say, yes, I can do this. And it's okay to come through and make the mistakes as long as we put the brakes on and we analyze why didn't it work? What is the thing? And then figure out the way through. And then once you see the clarity, you tell me, but when you see the clarity and you finally are like, this is it, don't you actually viscerally, don't you feel it in your body? Isn't it different,
Yeah.
Laurel, right?
Yeah, I had this, breakdown this fall. I have a breakdown like monthly, actually, but for various reasons. But the one this fall happened to be over, this school and going back to school. And, in the email I wrote you, I say, I feel like I've taken 3 steps backward, but when when I got this clarity, it was like I was able to release and say, like, it's going to be okay. Like
Right.
you're working your plan. You've made a
Right.
plan, and you're working your plan, and that doesn't come with the sexy success that you're seeing of everybody else, but that's because you've defined that success on their narrative. Like, you're not
Right.
using your narrative. And I really had to come to grips with that. I'll never forget some Amber Lewis's episode. She said, don't compare your start to other people's middle. And I was
Yep.
doing that. I was looking at Shay McGee and saying, okay, she's been in business 5 years and she's got approximately 30 employees, and I'm assuming I'm over $1 million in revenue. So like I should have that, in 3 years. And I was looking at Sarah Lynn Brennan, who I absolutely adore and admire, and saying, okay, after 2 years in business, like she's absolutely killing it. So I should be doing that. And that wasn't right for me.
Right.
And I had to understand that, like, my path, my background, my history, my why is different. And I have to own my differences and work my strategy that is different and be okay with it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it. And it is, and so this goes to what I said a few moments ago, is recognizing the signs, feeling the signs in your gut, right? Because I feel it in my gut when I'm running, and anybody that works in my world and connected to me, if they're all trying to get me to make a decision, and they're like, I get an email and I get a this, and like, okay, we're circling back to that. I'm gathering information, and I'm not consciously, I am sometimes consciously, but I'm taking everything in. And there's a moment when I'm just like, oh, this is the answer. And the thing is, I can make a decision the day before, and it's just like, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? But when you know it, you know it. And that's what I really want people to do, is to tap into also, I call your inner goddess, right? Because, when you can admire Sarah, you can admire Shay, you can admire Amber. And there are, for as much as it's not your path, there's 3 others coming along that are going to duplicate the path in their own way, through their own vision,
Exactly.
their own thing, but are going to be like raging rock stars in 3 years. You know what I'm saying? But the thing is, to your point, yours requires a base of technical expertise. You are combining science with design. You don't just do that. You have to actually know the things behind that. You don't have to actually know the science behind design in order to be an amazing designer. We've got Nate Berkus. We've got dozens of them, right?
Yeah.
But for you, and also too, for you personally, you need that. You want that. Right? Because there's somebody else listening that could be like, I could teach it to myself. I could read every book on the planet. And I'd be like, yes, you can. But Laurel is going to derive her confidence and her ability and be able to fulfill her mission and her vision through knowing that she 110% has the back locked down.
Yeah, and that was another realization, is this idea of confidence. I was so not confident. I went to my first design client, and I had to do a 20-minute pep talk in the mirror prior to getting in the car. The whole car, I listened to Don't Leap, kind of motivational things. And I get there because it's my first ever design client. And I remember Melissa Galt. The only reason I got this design client was because I had met Melissa Galt at Designer Influencers Conference, and I was telling her about my life, and I was like, I really hope to start something in the future, and she's like, you hope to start, or you're gonna start? And I'm like, oh shoot. But she's like, you just need to start calling yourself a designer. When you're at the grocery store and you're getting into small talk about picking out your sour cream, tell the lady next to you you're a designer. So sure enough, I was at this store in our just a local kind of boutique store, gift shop, and this woman was picking out a candle, and she was like, oh, do you like this scent or this scent? And I was like, oh, I kind of like that one. And I just said, well, where is it? Is it for a bathroom? Is it for a gift? And we just kind of got into small talk. She's like, well, what do you do? And I was like, I'm a designer. And just saying it, I was like, ugh. But she's like, oh, you are? I need help with my dining room. Would you come over? And I was like, oh my God.
Oh my goodness.
She was my first client. And I get into her house, and she's asking me all of these technical questions, and I had no idea. And I was muscling through it, you know, and I'm a big believer in not overselling your qualifications. And I was like, you know, I'm very new to this. I'm actually pivoting my career. You know, and I was very fair and giving her the backstory, but felt so underprepared, and I was so not confident. And I was like, how do I get confidence? And I thought back on my life, on the times that I've felt most confident. And it was when I was in Afghanistan. I deployed in 2011, and at that time there was a huge upheaval and concussion in the military, and they specifically trained us. We went through months and months and months of lead up training to serve as concussion specialists and kind of manage concussion in theater. And we trained with like literally the industry's best experts on concussion. And for all intents and purposes, I was the only concussion expert on our base. And that was the time in my life when I shined, and I reflected on that and thought, I get confidence from knowing. A lot of people get confidence from doing, and I certainly understand that. I certainly understand the idea of starting before you're ready, doing it, not failing, and realizing that wasn't that bad, and having the ability to get back up and try it again. I get that, and I think for some applications, that's certainly relevant. But for me, for Laurel, I need to read the entire instruction book start to finish before I even attempt to put together the jungle gym. You know, my husband's different. He'll kind of jump in and toggle and fiddle. And I'm like, I don't even know what you're doing. And it's just not me. Like my personality, my human beingism, my enneagram, you know, whatever is, I get confidence from knowing the technical side of it. When I was in healthcare, like was confident knowing that this is carpal tunnel because I know the structures and the anatomical relationships to the features in your wrist. And there was no throwing me off kilter because I knew what I was talking about. And with that first client, I didn't know what I was talking about. I had no idea what kind of lighting she needed in her kitchen. I had no idea if that wall could come down. I had no idea what kind of rug she should get. And, you know, these are all things that, yes, you can muscle through. And a lot of people do. And I'm not talking negatively about that at all. I'm saying for me, it was such a blow to my ego and my confidence. And I was like, I can't do this. Like for me, I get confidence from knowing the technical foundation of it, and I have to do that.
I love it. You see, even this aha about yourself, could you have had that at 20, 22, 23? I challenge that you probably could not have, right? In other words, it's the perspective of understanding. And I love that when you were, your world was a little rocked in that presentation, that, what a great question to ask yourself. When have I felt confident, right? What's an awesome question, Laurel, to say, well, I was uncomfortable here. I had anxiety here. And the problem was I wasn't confident what I was doing. So how do I get confidence? And it's like, well, I start with when were the times and the places that I did feel confident, and then breaking that down and understanding that I was well prepared. I was well taught. I personally, Laurel, knew the technical side of it. And that's getting all the way down to really serving yourself as a human being, right? And really figuring out. And so now going back to New York School of Interior Design at 34 years old and after 2 other degrees is not a step backwards. It is literally the step forward, because Laurel understands that for me to thrive, for me to be successful, for me to be confident, I want to have the technical knowledge. And to your point, you're exactly right. It is different for every single one of us. You mentioned Taylor Spellman. What did she say the first time that she had the opportunity to do that staging project? It was like, I think it was a 6 or 7 figure project. And she met the guy at a party, that Michael Serhant guy or whatever his name is. I don't follow that stuff. Right. And he was like, can you, she's like, yeah, I got this. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because her makeup, everything about her life and her childhood and her headset and her mindset is created a completely different outcome into how she processes every situation she's in. And this is so amazing, Laurel, that you have had such growth through all of this.
And I have to say, like, I got that from LuAnn Live. I mean, at LuAnn Live, I really went home and went to work on myself and went to work on, what is it that I need to be successful? And what is it, and I'll say at LuAnn Live, I learned so much. I made so many connections. I still reach out to Sarah via DM. I did a coaching call with her. I reach out to people that I know. I met Wendy Wallachuk and, have gone to several of her local networking events. But that working on myself and building that foundation in myself has been instrumental for me, and just doing things that are more in alignment with me. I went to LuAnn Live and I emulated what I thought, what other people were doing, because I thought that that's what I should do. I thought that's what entrepreneurship was, is you just dive in. And I think it is for some people, but I guess my point is there's another way too. And just because you don't follow the path of everybody else doesn't mean you're not successful. Doesn't mean you're not, upholding your why or whatever. It just means your path, your why, your mission potentially is a little different, that calls for a little bit different recipe. Right. And I had to get comfortable with that. I had to own it. And I had to, accept that my story is going to look different than Sarah Lynn Brennan's. My story is going to look different than Shay McGee's. And that's okay. Right. I want to do this my way, and this is how I'm going to do it. And I'm not going to look back on it.
I love it. I love it. I can't tell you how grateful I am, Laurel, that you came on here and you shared this journey with us, because it's exactly what it is. It's really us getting this front row seat to the growth that you have experienced in, definitely in the last year since attending LuAnn Live, but in your entire adult life, and bringing you to this point. And I have no doubt that you are going to create a business that really supports your mission and vision, and that changes the lives of those families that you are so committed to helping being their best self in their environment. It's remarkable, really. And you know what? We have not heard the last of you. I'm 100% certain of that.
Thanks, LuAnn.
Yeah, really. So thank you so much for coming on today, Laurel. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, LuAnn. I'm so grateful to have the opportunity. I actually wasn't going to reach out because I even questioned the value of my story, and I thought, I don't know if this is valuable. I don't know if it would help people. And it's funny, my husband actually started a side business to help us pay for the inventory that I've purchased. He's the salt of the earth, but I mean, he started a side hustle. He's very good at what he does. And I've been, because of the things that I've learned, have kind of been pushing him in the entrepreneurial direction, not to leave his job, but just because I think he has this talent. And I've been saying, you need to get on a podcast. You have so much valuable information to share. And I feel like you need to be heard. And he's like, you need to be on a podcast. And I'm like, I don't have anything to share yet. I haven't made $100 million in revenue. I haven't hit, business success that the other guests have shared. He's like, you have a story to tell, Laurel. And there's a lot of lessons and I think a lot of value that people need to hear. And I was like, really? And he was like, yes. And so I wasn't going to reach out, and I owe pretty much, all of my success to him. He's largely been my rock in life, but he pushed me and said, I think you should think twice about the lessons in your story. So I did.
I am so glad he did, because you definitely did have something of value to share with us. And I'm 100% certain that you're going to get a lot of messages from listeners who are grateful that you did, listen to your husband. So thank you to him.
Oh.
And thank you to you for coming on the show today, Laurel.
Thank you for having me, LuAnn.
I love how Laurel said her mission and vision is actually the anchor in her business. Please take this message to heart. This is your North Star for all of your decisions related to your business. It's how you evaluate if an idea is a good one, a great one, or one to put aside. You simply say, does this idea serve my mission and values? Whether you are contemplating a new hire, renting or buying a studio space, a new vendor to work with, you can answer nearly every question you wonder about your business by first asking yourself, does it support my mission and values? Okay. And I would say if you are struggling with this, whether you are 2 years in business or 20, I do encourage you to grab my first book and read it with an open mind. Okay. You can get that at LuAnnNigara.com/book. I will tell you that I had two particular people in mind as I wrote every single sentence. The first was the brand new business owner or potential business owner who is looking for a roadmap before setting out in business. But the other person I was speaking to was the business owner who has been in business, whether it's 5, 10, or 20 years, but has not found happiness in their business, has not found profitability in their business, does not consider themselves successful, and might be looking for that reset or just searching for why. What is escaping me, right? So I know that if you're in that boat, it's because you've missed a step. Just like Laurel, she read the book and she thought, okay, I'll do that later. And then the next year passed and the buying of the staging things and so forth, right? You can't miss that step. I literally wrote the book in the chapter order of what I truly believe is step 1, step 2, step 3 in creating a business that you're proud of and that sustains you, okay? So I am encouraging you, if you are missing something, if you are not making money, then, and you're not happy in making the money, then please give it a thought and read the book, okay? All right, now, we mentioned several previous guests and episodes in this conversation. We have Amber Lewis, Shay McGee, Nicole Heimer, Sarah Brennan, Nancy Ganzicalfer, Michelle Williams, Shauna Lynn Simon, Taylor Spellman, Wendy Wallace-Chuck, okay? You can find all of those episodes in the show notes, okay? Go to my website, and for the show notes for this particular episode or whichever app you are listening to, the show notes will have these, all right? There is a ton of information in each and every one of these shows. Just as Laurel said, this is where she got her, the foundation and all of these things going through her head that all formulated and finally became this moment of clarity for her. All right. So please go back and make sure you listen to each of these episodes. Before I go, I also want to say that we talked a lot about Laurel's experience at LuAnn Live, okay? We've actually had several guests over the last year take me up on my offer to come on the show and tell me about their experiences. And they are all relating a very similar message, how transformative it was for their business to be at LuAnn Live. They talk about the chance to sit down with people like Shauna Lynn and Sandra Funk and Taylor Spellman and Fred Burns and myself as well, right? Because, that's what it was. We were together, and that's what made it magical, okay? And I want you to know, even though COVID-19 has created a new world order for us, especially for us here in New Jersey and New York, I am going to bring LuAnn Live to you again. I'm working out the how, the when, the way. But know for sure it will happen, and it will be every bit as special, as amazing, and as transformative as you have heard it was. Not ready to announce the details just yet, but if you want to be on the email list to know first when I have it worked out, then go to LuAnnLive.com and get your name on that list. I want to meet you, and I want you to have that same moment that Laurel had, okay? So thank you tons for being here. Thank you for sharing the show with your friends. Thank you for your reviews on iTunes and for your emails. I love your guts. Decide to be excellent. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at LuAnnNigara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.